I still remember the first time I met Ethan. He had that easy smile that made you forget your worries, the kind of charm that makes you believe everything will be okay. Back then, I was working part-time at a diner and studying to become a nurse. He was struggling, but I didn't mind. I thought love meant helping each other. I told myself that money problems could be fixed if we had trust. When we got married, things started getting harder. Ethan had old credit card debts, unpaid loans, and even money he owed to friends. He promised he would sort it out, but every month, the bills just kept piling up. I started taking more shifts, mornings at the diner, evenings cleaning offices, and weekends waiting tables at another restaurant. I barely slept, but I told myself it was just for a while. Ethan didn't work much. He said he was looking for the right opportunity. I believed him. I thought maybe he just needed time to find something stable. I kept telling myself he'd appreciate what I was doing. Every time I came home exhausted, I looked at him sitting on the couch, playing games or scrolling through his phone, and told myself it was temporary. Love was supposed to be patient, right? Sometimes he'd thank me, say I was his rock, and I'd melt. Other times, he acted like it was expected. I brushed it off. I didn't want to fight. I wanted peace, a happy home, and a future we could build together. My friends told me I was doing too much, that I was carrying him. But I defended him every time. He's just going through a rough patch, I'd say. He'll bounce back. There were nights I'd come home after 12 hours on my feet, and he'd ask, "What's for dinner?" As if it never crossed his mind that I was starving and drained. I'd still cook for him because I wanted him to see I cared. I didn't realize then that I was teaching him I'd always be there, no matter how little he gave back. I used to keep a small jar of coins on the kitchen counter, tips from my shifts. I'd drop them in proudly, thinking, we're getting closer. Every time we paid off another bill, I felt like we were winning together. I didn't see that I was the only one fighting for that win. Ethan began to change too. The man who once called me his best friend started treating me like a background character in his story. I noticed how he barely talked to me anymore unless he wanted something, money, food, or comfort. It was like my needs didn't exist. I told myself to stay strong, that all my sacrifices would be worth it once we were debt-free. But deep down, something inside me was starting to break. I could feel it in the quiet moments when I'd sit on the edge of our bed, staring at the floor, wondering if love was supposed to feel this lonely. And then came that night, the night that made me realize everything I'd built, everything I'd given, was for someone who never saw me as his partner, but as his possession. Ethan had this confidence that drew people in. He talked big about his dreams, opening his own business, traveling, building a life full of success. I wanted to believe in that vision with him. It didn't matter that his past was messy. He told me he had made some mistakes when he was younger, but he was ready to change. I thought I could help him get there. I thought love could fix everything. When we started living together, I saw how bad things really were. He had unopened letters stacked on his desk, credit card bills, overdue notices, and debt collection warnings. I remember the first time I opened one. The number shocked me. But Ethan just smiled and said, "It's under control." I didn't want to doubt him, but deep down I knew it wasn't. He tried for a few months to manage it, but things only got worse. One evening, after another argument about money, I made a decision that would change everything. I'd put my dreams on hold. I withdrew from nursing school, promising myself it would only be for a year or two. I told Ethan I'd help us get through this. His eyes softened and he hugged me, saying, "You won't regret this, Lauren. I'll make it up to you one day." That night, I sat at our kitchen table with a notebook and calculator, trying to figure out how to make ends meet. I started applying for more hours at work. The diner needed people to cover night shifts, and an office nearby needed a cleaner. I took both. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid. I thought I was doing the right thing, that if I worked hard now, we'd have a better future later. The long days turned into long months. My body ached all the time, and I barely saw the sun. Sometimes I'd eat only once a day to save money. I learned to live on coffee and hope. Every time a payment went through, I'd cross another debt off the list and feel proud. Ethan would thank me, sometimes kiss my forehead and say, "You're my angel." Those small words kept me going. But there were also nights when he didn't notice. He'd go out with friends or stay home watching TV, acting like the bills were just magically disappearing. I told myself he was stressed, that maybe he needed distractions. I didn't want to believe he was careless. I convinced myself he was grateful deep down, even if he didn't say it often. I remember looking at him one morning while he slept in, and I was getting ready to head to my first shift. I whispered, "It's okay. We'll get there." I really believed that once the debts were gone, everything would change, that he would finally see what I'd done for him and we'd start fresh. But what I didn't realize then was that every sacrifice I made was teaching him something I never intended, that I would always carry the weight, and he could always depend on me to clean up his messes. I thought love meant sacrifice, but I was slowly learning that I was the only one sacrificing anything. It started small, the changes. Ethan used to meet me at the door when I came home late, ask how my shift went, maybe heat up leftovers for me. But over time, he stopped. The little things faded first, the hugs, the thank yous, the small moments of care that make love feel alive. I'd walk into a silent house, dishes piled up, lights still on, and him stretched out on the couch without a care in the world. At first, I thought it was the stress. Maybe all the bills and pressure were getting to him. I told myself he just needed space. I tried to be patient, to keep things peaceful. When I asked him to help around the house or maybe cook dinner once in a while, he'd roll his eyes and say, "You're always nagging me, Lauren. Can you just relax for once?" That word, nagging, started to come up a lot. Every request turned into an argument. I was working 3 jobs, barely sleeping, and he was calling me a nag for asking him to take out the trash. It stung more than I wanted to admit. But instead of standing up for myself, I just stayed quiet. I told myself it wasn't worth fighting over. I thought maybe things would get better once the stress eased. But they didn't. They got worse. He started going out more with his friends, staying out late while I was still at work. I'd come home after a 10-hour shift to find empty beer bottles on the counter and fast food wrappers on the couch. When I'd mention it, he'd laugh it off, saying, "Relax, babe. Don't be so uptight." It felt like he was slowly turning me into the bad guy, the one who complained too much. One night, I came home around midnight, completely exhausted. I'd just finished cleaning offices for the 3rd night in a row. My back hurt, my hands smelled like bleach, and all I wanted was to shower and sleep. But as I opened the front door, I heard laughter, loud, careless laughter. Ethan was there with 3 of his friends, half drunk, the living room a mess. He looked up at me and smirked. "Oh, don't worry, the maid's here," he joked, raising his beer. "She loves cleaning up after me." His friends burst out laughing. It took me a second to process what he said. The maid. That's what I was to him now. Not his wife. Not his partner. Just someone who cleaned up his mess. I forced a laugh, pretending it didn't bother me. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me hurt. But inside, something broke. I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the tub, staring at the floor. My hands were shaking, not from exhaustion this time, but from anger and humiliation. That night, I realized something I'd been avoiding for too long. Ethan didn't see me as an equal anymore. Maybe he never really did. I was just convenient, someone to hold his world together while he sat back and watched. I didn't cry that night. I just sat there, numb, realizing the love I had been fighting for might already be gone. It was a Thursday night, the kind where the air felt heavy and quiet. I had picked up an extra shift at the diner because one of the girls called in sick. My feet were sore, my uniform smelled like grease, and all I wanted was to shower and fall asleep. Usually, Ethan would already be in bed by the time I got home, but when I pulled into the driveway, I saw the lights still on. At first, I thought it was strange. It was almost midnight. Then I noticed the window in the living room was cracked open, and I heard voices, Ethan's and someone else's. I paused, thinking maybe they were watching a game or talking about work. But as I got closer to the porch, I heard my name. "Man, Lauren's the perfect setup," Ethan said, his tone light, almost proud. "She works her butt off, pays all the bills, cooks, cleans. She's basically my personal slave. I don't even gotta lift a finger." For a second, I thought I misheard him. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then his best friend Troy laughed, that careless, cruel laugh that echoed through the night. "You really lucked out, dude," Troy said. "Most women would have left by now." Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, but not Lauren. She's too soft. Always trying to fix everything. I just let her do her thing, and life's easy." I froze where I stood, my hands still on the porch railing. The man I had sacrificed everything for, the one I loved, supported, defended, was sitting in our living room bragging about using me like some servant. My whole body went cold. It was like time stopped. The laughter inside felt distant, muffled, like it was happening in another world. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe for a few seconds. I just stood there, staring through the window, watching him grin as he talked about me like I wasn't a person at all. Every night I had dragged myself out of bed to work, every bill I paid, every dream I had given up. All of it, reduced to a joke between two men who thought it was funny. I slowly backed away from the window and sat in my car. The silence inside felt louder than their laughter. My chest hurt, not from sadness, but from the shock of finally seeing the truth. He never appreciated me. He never respected me. All that talk about teamwork, love, and building a future, it was all a lie. I stayed in the car for almost an hour, staring at the steering wheel, replaying his words over and over. Personal slave. The words burned into my head. I wanted to scream, to burst through that door and tell him how cruel he sounded. But something in me stopped. That night, sitting in the dark, I realized I didn't need to confront him. Not yet. I needed to think. I needed to decide if I was going to keep living like this or finally walk away. It was the moment everything inside me changed. I went inside quietly, pretending I hadn't heard a thing. He greeted me with a lazy smile, asking if I could make him a sandwich. I said nothing. That was the moment I knew. I was done being his joke. He just didn't know it yet. After that night, everything looked the same on the outside, but inside me, something had shifted forever. I didn't scream, didn't pack my things, didn't even let him know I'd heard what he said. I just started seeing him for who he really was. Every word he spoke sounded empty. Every smile looked fake. I moved through the days quietly, doing what I always did, but without the same heart behind it. That sentence, personal slave, kept replaying in my mind like a broken record. I'd hear it while I was scrubbing dishes, while I was folding laundry, while I was dragging myself out of bed before sunrise for work. It used to be that I'd think of him to keep going. Now, thinking of him only made me feel sick. I started pulling back little by little. I stopped making him breakfast before my morning shifts. I stopped washing his clothes. When I got home late, I didn't cook dinner anymore. I'd just make myself something simple and eat alone. At first, he didn't notice. He was so used to me doing everything that my silence blended into the routine. But eventually, he caught on. One evening, he looked around the kitchen and frowned. "You didn't pack my lunch?" He asked like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't even look up from my phone. "No," I said simply. He stared at me for a moment, confused. The next day, he found his clothes still sitting dirty in the hamper and came to me, annoyed. "What's going on with you lately? You used to care." I looked right at him, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel afraid or guilty. I just felt done. "Maybe I finally woke up," I said quietly, my voice calm and steady. He blinked, clearly not expecting that. He laughed a little, like I was joking, but I didn't smile back. That's when he realized something was different. The next few days were tense. He tried to be nice at first, offering to help with groceries or complimenting me in that fake sweet tone he used when he wanted something. But I didn't take the bait. I had spent years believing his promises, and I was finished being fooled. I wasn't going to fight or beg. I was going to make my next move carefully. At night, when he fell asleep on the couch, I'd sit at the kitchen table and think. For the first time in years, my mind was clear. I wasn't crying or hoping he'd change. I was planning. I realized he had no idea how much power I really had. Every bill, every payment, every account, all of it went through me. He thought I was weak because I stayed quiet, but he forgot something important. Silence isn't always surrender. That night, I promised myself that my revenge wouldn't come from yelling or breaking things. It would come from taking back every ounce of control he stole from me. I wasn't going to hurt him the way he hurt me. I was going to do something worse, make him feel what it's like to lose everything while I walked away untouched. I moved carefully and quietly. First, I opened a new bank account in my name alone at a small local credit union. I did it on a day off, using my ID and a different email, so nothing would link back to our joint accounts right away. Then I went to work and filled out direct deposit paperwork to have my paycheck sent to that new account. It felt strange, like I was taking a small, private step toward a life that belonged only to me. Next, I started saving every scrap of paper and every digital receipt I could find. I pulled up old bank statements on my phone and screenshot transfers I had made to his accounts. I printed copies of online payments, credit card receipts, and records from the mortgage company. I even kept notes of the nights I covered bills and the exact amounts. Little things, each one by itself, wouldn't mean much. Together, they would show a clear pattern. I also changed passwords on anything he didn't need access to. My email, my shopping accounts, and a few shared utilities that were in my name. I did not lock him out of everything. I didn't want him to suspect anything. But I made sure the things I needed for proof and for my future were safe. I scanned documents and saved them to a secure folder on my phone, then backed them up to a password-protected cloud account I accessed only from my phone. During lunch breaks, I started meeting with a lawyer recommended by a coworker. I paid in cash and went to appointments at odd times so it wouldn't look suspicious. The lawyer listened, then explained how evidence of consistent payments could be used in court. She asked for copies of bank transfers, screenshots of debts in his name, and any messages where he admitted responsibility for bills. She said that bills alone wouldn't tell the whole story, but money flowing from my account to cover his debts would. That was the moment the plan felt real. I also collected small witness statements. A neighbor had seen me leave for work before dawn many times. A cleaning supervisor remembered my overtime schedule. I asked both to write down what they knew, not dramatic accusations, just facts about how often I worked and what they observed. I knew that friends and neighbors couldn't win a court case by themselves, but their notes could support my timeline. All the while, I kept up my routines at home so nothing obvious would change. I still answered his questions and kept the house tidy enough to avoid suspicion. At night, I looked over the folder of documents and felt a strange mix of calm and fury. I was angry at how I'd been used, but I was also proud of how quietly I was taking back control. By the end of the month, I had a thick file, bank statements, receipts, screenshots, and signed notes from people who had watched me work. I had my own paycheck flowing into my account, a lawyer who knew the facts, and a plan to use the evidence if I needed to protect myself. It wasn't dramatic or satisfying in a loud way. It was steady and thorough, and that steadiness felt like power. It started with small things he didn't notice. For years, I had been the one keeping track of payments, setting reminders, and making sure every due date was covered. Ethan never bothered to look. He thought the bills paid themselves. So when I decided to stop paying one of his old credit cards, it was almost too easy. At first, nothing happened. Weeks passed quietly. I went to work as usual, came home, kept to myself, and stayed calm. Then one afternoon, I heard his phone ringing over and over again. He frowned at the screen, answered, and after a short pause, snapped. "She handles that stuff, talk to her." I was in the kitchen, pretending not to listen. The look on his face changed when the caller said something that caught him off guard. He came into the kitchen holding the phone, his tone sharp. "Did you forget to pay my Capital One bill?" he asked. I wiped my hands on a towel and said simply, "No, I didn't forget." His eyebrows pulled together. "Then why are they calling me?" he asked, sounding more nervous than angry. I shrugged and said, "Maybe because it's your card, Ethan. Your name's on it, not mine." For a second, he just stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "Yeah, but you always take care of that stuff," he said. "Can you just cover it for now? I'll pay you back." He said it in that same careless tone that made me sick. The tone of someone who thought everything was still the same, that I'd just roll over and fix his mess again. I turned to face him fully and met his eyes. "You've got this, right?" I said evenly. "I'm not your slave, remember?" His expression changed instantly. The color drained from his face. For the first time, I saw confusion flicker into panic. He froze, then tried to play it off with a weak laugh. "What are you talking about?" he said. But his voice was too shaky. He knew I had heard him that night with Troy. I didn't give him an explanation. I just walked past him, calm and steady, and went upstairs. Behind me, he was still talking, trying to ask what I meant, but I didn't answer. For once, the silence was mine. Over the next few days, the calls kept coming. I could hear him arguing on the phone, his voice growing more frustrated each time. Letters started showing up in the mail. Red print, words like past due and final notice. I didn't touch them. I just let them pile up on his desk the way he used to ignore them before I came into his life. Ethan tried to act tough at first, but when the collectors started calling at odd hours, I could see the stress wearing on him. He'd snap easily, pace the living room, slam drawers. One night, I overheard him muttering about how unfair it was that everything's on him. I almost laughed. That was my life for years, and now he was getting a small taste of it. He didn't know it, but his downfall had already begun. Not because I was trying to destroy him, but because he was finally living without someone cleaning up his mess. Karma didn't need my help. It was just doing its job. And watching him struggle, for once, didn't make me feel guilty. It made me feel free. A week later, everything was ready. The papers were signed, the evidence was organized, and my lawyer had done exactly what I asked. Every document, every receipt, every bank record was included. I didn't sleep much the night before. It wasn't fear keeping me up, it was relief. For the first time in years, I was about to end something that had been draining me piece by piece. That morning, I made breakfast like usual. Ethan sat at the table scrolling through his phone, half-dressed for work, still acting like the world revolved around him. I placed the envelope in front of his plate and said quietly, "You might want to read that before you go." He didn't even look up at first. "What's this?" he mumbled, still focused on his phone. "Just read it," I said. My tone must have caught his attention because he finally looked at me, then down at the envelope. He tore it open, scanning the first page, and suddenly his smirk appeared. "Divorce papers? Seriously?" He chuckled like it was a joke. "Lauren, stop being dramatic. We'll talk about it later." But I didn't move. "Keep reading," I said. His eyes darted across the pages, and slowly the grin faded. His forehead tightened, his mouth pressed into a hard line. Then he flipped through more pages, faster this time. I could see it hit him when he reached the section that listed financial records. Every payment I'd made toward his credit cards, loans, and bills. My lawyer had even attached proof of his messages asking me to just cover it for now. He looked up, his voice cracking slightly. "What the hell is this?" "It's proof," I said evenly. "Proof that I paid your debts. Proof that I worked extra hours to keep us afloat while you wasted money. Proof that you used me." His jaw clenched. He slammed the papers on the table. "You think this will hold up in court?" he snapped. "It already does," I replied. The lawyer made sure of it. For a few seconds, the only sound was the clock ticking. Then, like a child throwing a tantrum, he grabbed his coffee mug and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, splattering dark stains across the white paint. "Don't walk away from me," he shouted, his voice shaking with rage. But I was already standing. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. No fear, no sadness, not even anger. Just peace. "You used me," I said softly. "But I learned something important. You can't enslave someone who's willing to walk away." He froze. His face twisted between fury and disbelief, but I didn't wait for a response. I grabbed my bag, walked to the door, and stepped outside. The cool air hit my face, and I took a deep breath. Behind me, I could still hear him shouting, but his voice grew smaller with every step I took. I didn't look back. Not once. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't his anything. Not his helper, not his fixer, not his possession. I was free. After leaving that house, I didn't have much. Just a few bags, some savings I'd quietly set aside, and peace of mind. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. No shouting, no guilt, no walking on eggshells. For the first few weeks, I slept better than I had in years. The silence felt healing instead of heavy. Once I settled in, I made a list of the things I had given up for him. Nursing school was at the top. So I applied again, not knowing if I'd even get accepted after so long. When the acceptance email came, I cried right there at my kitchen table. It wasn't just about school, it was about taking my life back. I started working part-time at a clinic and attending classes during the day. My schedule was packed, but this time it was for me, not for someone who didn't care. Every assignment, every shift, every late night studying felt like progress towards something real. I could feel myself becoming stronger, more focused, more like the woman I used to be before Ethan drained me. At first, he tried to reach out. He called from different numbers, sent emails, and even tried contacting my coworkers. Every message said the same thing. How sorry he was, how he missed me, how things could go back to normal. I didn't respond. I blocked every number, deleted every email. He didn't deserve even a word from me. Then, a few months later, I got a message from Troy, the same friend who had laughed at Ethan's slave joke. He wrote, "Just thought you should know Ethan lost his job. The company let him go after missing too many payments. His car got repossessed too. Guess life's teaching him a lesson." I read that message and just sat there quiet. Not out of joy, but out of closure. I didn't need to celebrate his downfall. It was never about revenge anymore. Life simply balanced itself. Karma had done its job without me lifting a finger. Meanwhile, I was thriving. My grades were good, my confidence was back, and for the first time in years, I could look in the mirror and feel proud. I even started making small plans, saving up for a better apartment, maybe a trip once I graduated. Sometimes on late nights, I'd think about how different everything felt. I used to believe love meant sacrifice, that if I gave enough, someone would see my worth. But now, I understood something much simpler. Real love doesn't demand you lose yourself to prove it. One evening, while walking home from class, I looked up at the sky and smiled. I had rebuilt everything from nothing. No husband, no fancy house, no promises. Just me, my strength, and a future I was finally creating for myself. Ethan had his karma. I had my freedom. And that, to me, was more than enough. 1 year later, my life looked completely different. I walked across the stage in my nursing school graduation gown, my heart full of pride and peace. There were no fancy flowers, no husband cheering from the crowd, just a few friends from class clapping for me. But that was enough. I had done it all on my own. No debts hanging over my head, no one draining my energy, no one mocking my effort. Just me and the life I'd fought to rebuild. After the ceremony, I sat on a bench outside the campus, holding my diploma in my hands. I remembered all those nights when I came home exhausted from cleaning offices, cooking dinner, and still having to deal with Ethan's coldness. The contrast hit me hard. Back then, I felt like I was drowning, trapped in a cycle of giving without ever being seen. Now, I finally understood what freedom really felt like, quiet, calm, and completely mine. I moved into a brighter apartment closer to the hospital where I started working as a nurse. It wasn't big, but it felt warm, filled with the scent of fresh coffee and peace. Every morning, I'd look around and remind myself, I earned this. Every inch of it. Sometimes coworkers would ask if I was seeing anyone, or if I wanted to settle down again. I'd just smile and say, not yet. Peace is better than partnership with the wrong person. And I meant it. I wasn't against love. I just refused to mistake struggle for devotion again. I learned that love without respect isn't love at all. It's control disguised as care. When you carry someone else's weight while they mock you behind your back, that's not loyalty. That's self-betrayal. I promised myself never again to shrink or sacrifice my dreams just to make someone else comfortable. Ethan had tried contacting me once more, a few months before my graduation. He sent a long message, talking about regrets, about how he missed what we had. I read it once, then deleted it. There was nothing left to say. Some stories don't need closure. They just need to end. Life became beautifully simple. I worked my shifts, came home to quiet evenings, and spent weekends exploring things I never had time for, reading, cooking, and even hiking alone. I didn't need anyone's approval or validation anymore. I had found contentment in independence. One night, as I stood on my balcony watching the sunset, I realized how far I'd come. The woman who once broke her back trying to save a man was now standing tall on her own. I whispered to myself, never build someone else's empire while they laugh about your chains. Because I finally understood that freedom doesn't come when someone saves you. It comes when you save yourself. And that's what I did. I broke the chains, walked away, and never looked back.